peer delegate awards were given to senior political science major Lady Baldion alongside senior political science major Eloise Jones and sophomore English major Sophia Santiago and senior political science major Ben Collins. To share their success with the writer community, a debrief
TheBronx.com/Rider News Roundup. Because when it comes to what's happening at Rider, you'll always hear it here first. And now, let's get back to the biggest hits and the best variety only on 107.7 The Bronx.
107.7 The Bronx, 107.7TheBronx.com, winner of 3 2026 Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Media Awards. Best on-air pledge drive for our first ever Radiothon. Best giveaway for Wake Up Riders Morning Bagel Run and Jewelry Spree. And best station poster by Jake Goebel for Scream Screen. This is the Tom Hill Show here on a Monday morning, and we've got a lot to discuss in the world of basketball as the first round did take shape over this last weekend. And, you know, something that I kind of wanted to mention, something I mentioned earlier on this show, I think back in the fall, is really when I kind of spearheaded this. And I've been on this, and again, this isn't really like the greatest take ever. This is not exactly something that, you know, requires a whole lot of thought to it. But basically something that I said right as he got drafted is that Victor Wembanyama is the type of talent that just completely changes the landscape of the league, not just the landscape of a team. And I think that, you know, that's something that sounds hyperbolic coming right out, especially, you know, a kid coming out of France who's, you know, right around 19 years old, right as he got drafted. You're kind of like, well, you don't want to put too lofty of expectations on this kid because there's a good chance, you know, whether it's injuries or just productivity or, you know, there's a very good chance he doesn't live up to it. But I mean, he's lived up to the billing every single step of the way. And really the only thing that's been able to deter him just a bit has been injuries. And we kind of waited for the first couple of years of his career to see some winning, but I also think the Spurs were in that position where, you know, they still needed to build up. They still needed to draft a lot of key players. And boy, Stephon Castle, that's another hit. You know, UConn guy, that's another one of those things that's like, you know, for years it was always, you know, when in doubt, just draft a receiver from LSU in football or just draft a Kentucky guard. But UConn, you know, similar to kind of Villanova guys, UConn guys kind of have that similar type of grit. And also they've had a lot of success lately with Hurley because he just completely transformed that program. So another hit there. And obviously Wembanyama. And when the Spurs won the lottery back when they did to draft him, I was really thrilled because I figured, you know what, this is a serious franchise. You get a lot of franchises in the NBA that, they kind of wait for a player to save them, or they wait for a player to maybe, bail them out of some bad management, some bad draft decisions, some poor, roster construction, and just bad basketball for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And you're kind of like, you see that in the NFL where it's a lot of times a team may think, all right, we're not good and we don't want to spend money, so we're just going to hope that we have a high draft pick and hope that this quarterback that we select will just transform, nothing and turn it into something. And you see that, a lot with, say, like the Cincinnati Bengals with Burrow. And now he's been hurt. So we start to see, the cracks in that foundation, because that's not a very good foundation. It's a team that has consistently been at the bottom of the barrel of the league. And, the Spurs are not that case. And that's why when Wembanyama gets drafted first overall in 2023, I think I kind of shared a lot of similar sentiments to a lot of people where it's, hey, this is a serious franchise. This is a franchise that's won with Popovich and Duncan and Parker. And, back in the early 2000s, they were really the biggest thorn in the side of the Lakers. And then they gave the Heat trouble in 2013, and the Heat beat them. And then a year later with Kawhi Leonard, they beat them. So they returned the favor. This is an organization that wins a lot. And Wembanyama is unbelievable. I mean, he completely transforms everything on the defensive end. And I think we've kind of reached a point now where we've seen, I still don't think we've seen, the peak optimization for certain players. I still think there might be a world in which, in baseball, a player could, I don't know, throw 108, 107. I mean, Mason Miller's pretty automatic. I don't know if he could reach that velocity. I still think there may be a world in which football, we may see some players who are maybe faster and throw faster and further, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of something I'm thinking about. But I think we've gotten to a point with basketball where, it feels like we have reached peak optimization with these athletes. I mean, with Wembanyama, it's the size and it's his ability to just completely disrupt everything defensively. I mean, he just completely changes everything that you can do offensively. And last night, 111-98 over Portland. And Denny Avdia was good. 30 points, efficient shooting. But it just was not enough because this Spurs team is so great. They're so great defensively that all they have to do, really, I mean, at the bottom line, is just not have a poor shooting night. I mean, the floor with this team, similar to Oklahoma City, and that's why I do think that Spurs Thunder, I think we are kind of on a collision course for a Spurs Thunder Western Conference Finals, because I just don't see a world in which, it just feels like this is a team similar to Oklahoma City, where the only real flaw that you can point out and the only real thing that you can maybe pick apart with this team is maybe they have some games, maybe they have some times where if the shooting falls apart, maybe they're not going to win. But I think even if you shoot at a decent clip, and yesterday they shot at an unbelievable clip. I mean, yesterday from the field, the Spurs 48%. 15 threes on 33 attempts, that's good for 45%. So if you shoot at an average clip, chances are you're going to win, especially this first round series against Portland. And I understand that, Portland's an upstart team and Avdia is a pretty good player, but the NBA is not designed for those seeds to have any real success. I mean, they could have success in the play-in. They can maybe steal a game like Orlando did from Detroit. But though this is not the league where you see a high seed, rattle off 4 wins against a 2 or a 1. This isn't the league. This is a league dominated by the teams at the top consistently. And we saw it last year with Oklahoma City. We've seen it with Boston recently. That I do think that, again, we're going to get a repeat. It's going to be the teams at the top. And I think we are on a collision course with Oklahoma City and San Antonio for the Western Conference Finals. I think that that's just how this is going to shape out. It's going to be interesting to see what Oklahoma City does with Wembanyama. It's another unbelievable defensive unit. But I think you're getting to the point now where we're seeing Wembanyama pay off in playoff basketball. I think, something I just mentioned, the first couple of years, we were kind of waiting for it all to come together. We were waiting for everything to finally be fully realized with Wembanyama, because I think, once you start getting, he's in year 3, but once you start getting into year 4, year 5, if there wasn't any playoff success, and this team is so good that they were just bound to have success at some point, but in the event, in a hypothetical world in which you didn't have any success or any appearances in the playoffs, you start getting into the, talented, but how good really are you type of debates. But that is not the case now, and he has just completely taken this league by storm. And I it's interesting, too, because I do think a lot of people say this, and you could argue that this maybe has some merit, where the NBA is kind of trying to latch on to their old stars with, LeBron and Curry and Durant, Harden, Westbrook, a lot of those older guys who are going to be out of the league in about 2, 3, 4 years, all of them. So, who is going to be that next star to kind of, be the face of the league? And I think for years, the NBA kind of figured, it'll be LeBron. It'll be LeBron. It'll be LeBron. And LeBron's just going to keep on getting another year older. Maybe next year is his last year. Maybe he gives it another 2 years. Who knows? But I definitely think that, who is going to really take the stage as that next star in the NBA? I think it could be Wembanyama. Jokic is the best player, but he doesn't really fit the bill for that. I think Anthony Edwards maybe does fit the bill, but is he good enough? Is he at the level of a Shea or a Jokic? No. So I don't know. I think for a while, the league, I think, has been trying to find who that player is. And maybe it is Wembanyama. This is a guy who is just all world in terms of what he's able to do on the defensive side. And then, you don't get this. You haven't gotten this in basketball ever. You never got guys who are this tall, who can shoot this well and play this smoothly. It just doesn't, we have reached a point in the NBA where if you're under 6'3", good luck. Good luck. If you're under 6'3", 6'4", you better shoot and shoot really well. Or you better be able to pass and deliver passes at a level that is just so next level that, if you're 6'2", 6'3", and you don't have, at the very least, a serviceable jumper, good luck. Good luck in this league. I got to give a lot of credit to a guy like Kyle Lowry. That's a guy who's kind of, lasted. He's a tough, gritty player. He was great with Toronto. But nowadays in the NBA, we've seen guards who are 6'5", 6'6". They could pass. They can shoot. We're seeing bigs who are over 7 foot who can shoot. The league has moved into a completely different sphere these last 4 or 5 years or so, when Andre Drummond, who didn't shoot at all for the first 9 years of his career, he's shooting. Al Horford is shooting. These guys are shooting. You have to be able to knock down three-point shots in today's NBA. And I think that's what we've seen really now, I think, nearing 10 years. The Warriors, they completely shifted everything in the NBA. Well, you got to be tough. You got to be big and strong and grab rebounds and physical. If you take a look at a lot of the current roster construction in the NBA right now, you see it. It's a lot of guys who can stretch the floor. It's a lot of guys who can shoot. The Quincy AC archetype of player, kind of that undersized 6'6", 6'7", tough guy who can kind of play the 4, but isn't really maybe big enough to play the 5. But he also can't shoot, so he's not a wing. They don't exist anymore. There's no real market for that type of player. If you're not able to shoot in today's NBA, you're behind the 8 ball. You're behind the 8 ball. And, what it allows for you to do is to have games like San Antonio did yesterday, where they knocked down 15 threes on 33 attempts. Look what Boston's been able to do. They shot 44 threes yesterday. They knocked down 16 of them. Like, okay, sure, yeah. Like, they had a couple of games last year against the Knicks where they were bad from downtown. I believe they shot 25% in both of those first two games. But, eventually they lost that series. And a lot of that had to do with Jason Tatum falling apart. And then, they still forced the Knicks to 6. And I don't really think, if you're a really good shooting team, those bad shooting nights don't really stick. If you have a night where you shoot under 30% from 3, chances of that sticking are very low if you're a team that's right around 35, 37%. That's why you do it. Like, if you only shoot about 20 threes a game, because think about it, it's just math, really. 3's more than 2. So, if you shoot 20 a night, even if you knock down 10 of them, that's just 30. If you shoot 40 or 35, your chances of knocking down more than 10 go up. So we've seen a complete shift in this sport. Really, I think if you think about all North American sports and the popular ones at that, I don't think I can think of any sport that has really shifted this much. Like, I guess you could say baseball, there's higher velocity. But I don't think offenses have gotten so much better than 10, 20 years ago. I think hitting has changed. Pitching has obviously changed. If you take a look at football, I think football kind of more so goes through cycles when you really boil it down. For a while, it was receiver, 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 passing game, passing game, passing game. And then, football, I think, is now over the last couple of years shifted back towards, everyone's drafting small to try to stop the passing game that has taken the league by storm. So in steps a team like the Eagles who, boom, market inefficiency. Let's go sign Saquon Barkley from the Giants. We have a great offensive line. Let's take advantage of that. And they won a Super Bowl. Derrick Henry leaves a bad team, goes to Baltimore, has a lot of success. And now we've kind of seen the resurgence of the running back in the NFL, which wasn't really the case like 5-6 years ago. It was, draft receivers, wait on running backs. Running backs are not important. Safeties aren't important. But I think the NFL is more cyclical. The NBA, not cyclical at all. Like, I think we have reached a point, you could argue the apex of these athletes where, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 15, you were able to say, well, guards shoot, centers can't shoot, they grab rebounds, but you can exist if you're tough. I just don't think we're going to go back to that point in the league. I think these guys are too good. They're so good at shooting. Doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter where you play, you got to shoot. And if you can shoot, there's always going to be a spot for you on an NBA roster. And that's why I think this Spurs team is so tough. I think they're neck and neck right there with OKC in the West. I think we're on a collision course to see the two of those teams meet in what should be a really intense Western Conference Finals. The recipes have all been submitted for 1077 The Bronx first ever Build the Ultimate Bronc Witch contest. The culinary team at Ryder Dining Services has evaluated each recipe in their test kitchen and have chosen the semester's Magnificent 7. Go to 1077thebronx.com/build a Bronc Witch recipes to see which Bronc Witch made it into our lunch bag. Then go to our Instagram at 1077thebronx.com to watch, like, and comment on all 7 IG reels. The 3 student reels with the most views will make it to the Tasty 3 and the Build the Ultimate Bronc Witch finale on Tuesday, April 28th from 11 to 1:30 p.m. inside Cranberries and at Muller's Pub. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements on your 3-time 2026 Intercollegiate Broadcasting Systems Media Award winner, 1077 The Bronx.
Mental Fitness on 1077 The Bronx is underwritten in part by LADA, the Lawrence Alcohol and Drug Alliance. Help your local community thrive.
Because if you don't, you're behind the 8 ball. I mean, it's just that simple. Now, I wanted to move into another talking point here, and I wanted to shift and go to football. So Dexter Lawrence, it's interesting. It's interesting because you would think now that John Harbaugh is the coach of the Giants, you would think that now would be the time for him to stay a Giant. Now, I know he kind of dipped a little bit in production last year, but he's been so great for them. And you would think Harbaugh, defensive special teams type guy, you would think that he would want to stay for this Giant team. You think that there is, definitely some momentum up in East Rutherford for the first time in, over a decade, really, for both teams. When you think about it, and now the Jets with the Buffalo Sabres in the playoffs, now the Jets have the biggest drought in sports. They haven't been to the postseason since 2010. So it's a long time coming, and the Giants won their Super Bowl in 2011, but it's been a long time coming for them as well. So you have to figure, like Dexter Lawrence, it's kind of interesting why he wanted out. Maybe he's heard things about Harbaugh. Maybe he's just not feeling another regime. Maybe he just doesn't. I don't know. But he got traded to Cincinnati. And now the Giants have 2 picks. And they better not screw this up, because now you think you have your quarterback in Dart, who performed very well last season. Relative to some expectations, I thought, I was on the side of the aisle that I thought just play Russell Wilson, let Jackson Dart sit. This is going to be a wasted season anyway. Don't have the kid get killed and just have him sit behind Wilson, who's a veteran. They played him early, and he actually looked a lot better than I thought he was going to. And I think one of the things that is interesting is now you at least have the decision on Dart, or at least an opinion on Dart. Whereas like when J.J. McCarthy was hurt his first year and it was Darnold there in Minnesota, you had no real opinion on McCarthy, at least in the NFL. So it's tough because then you go roll into next season with J.J. McCarthy as your starter, and it looks like a dumpster fire because you just did not know. And that's where it's tough. But with the Giants, it's different. You've seen Dart. You've seen him in that offense. He at least, maybe can be a little reckless, and maybe he takes some hits he doesn't have to, but he at least looks like a player. And now you have 2 first-round picks. You got to make it happen. You have to make this happen. This needs to be the year. Maybe not this year, but next year. Eventually, it's all got to come together with this Giant team. Malik Neighbors is going to get healthy soon. Scadaboo's got to be back probably by week 6 next year, week 5. That was a gruesome injury. So we'll see what you get out of him coming back. But, when you take a look at this Giant team, it doesn't really make sense why Dexter Lawrence would want to be traded. The only thing I could think of is he just didn't want to be under this regime. Because Harbaugh should bring some momentum to a team that needs it. And again, there are a lot of critics about what Harbaugh's done recently with Lamar Jackson, and he didn't win with an MVP, a 2-time MVP winning quarterback. I get it. But if we're actually just going to be fair here, think about some of the gauntlets he ran into in the playoffs. Think about Mark Andrews dropping that ball in Buffalo. Think about, Zay Flowers fumbling it in the back of the end zone or the front of the end zone in a tight game against Kansas City. And Lamar, who was great, that was his MVP season, didn't perform at home against Kansas City. Sure, yes, no, we can have some fair and honest criticism about John Harbaugh as a coach. But when we take a look at some of the shortcomings in Baltimore, you can't put it all on him. And this is a team in the Giants that has needed stability at that spot for years. I mean, it was McAdoo, and that was a dumpster fire. It was Pat Shurmur, and that didn't go over well. And then Joe Judge was another dumpster fire because they tried it with the Belichick tree, which doesn't really work unless it's Mike Vrabel. But, like Matt Patricia didn't work as a head coach. McDaniels hasn't ever worked anywhere as a head coach, and he's been circulating around. I think he's had about 2 or 3 different head coaching jobs. So, you can't really try it with anybody of that Belichick coaching tree. Now you have Harbaugh. You tried it with Brian Daboll, and Daboll, didn't really have a lot to work with. But the one thing you can say is, why did Daniel Jones have success the minute he left Brian Daboll and went to Indianapolis? Like, that is, that's something that if you're an offensive guy and you were the reason why Josh Allen took off up in Buffalo prior to getting the Giant job, that is something that I think people can fairly criticize about you as a head coach. How come it didn't work with Daniel Jones? He has something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been good with Indianapolis prior to getting hurt last year. So why did it work there but not in New York? And that's something that I think a lot of people, were fairly critical about with Daboll, is how come it seemed like it just never really worked? And now with Harbaugh, I think the theme, the mood amongst Giant fans and amongst the Giants, like within their organization as well, is that they think that 2026 could be a successful year, or that 2026 could be a step forward to a successful next couple of seasons. Maybe, potentially, but we got to figure it out because Dexter Lawrence is now a Cincinnati Bengal. And it's kind of interesting the way the Bengals have kind of operated this offseason. So they don't sign Trey Hendrickson. And I feel like this doesn't really seem to be a move that they would want to make. I feel like they'd be more in the business of keeping the pick rather than getting the player. And this is also a player that, while uber productive, was not the same guy last year. So maybe you think he'll tap back into what he was prior to last year. Maybe. I mean, the Bengals have needed defensive help for the last couple of years. We remember the 2024 season where they didn't make the playoffs, but I mean, Burrow and Chase were right there. I mean, if they made the playoffs, Burrow, that's his MVP. I mean, that's how good he was. And that offense, it felt like game after game, week after week, it felt like it was routinely a 42-38, 45-42. But I don't really understand this from Cincinnati's perspective. And I don't really understand what they're doing this offseason. Maybe they're trying to take advantage of a division that could be winnable because nobody knows what Cleveland's going to do. I don't even know if Cleveland knows what they're going to do, and Pittsburgh's also in limbo because Tomlin's gone and McCarthy's there. So you got to figure that, in all likelihood, appears to be Baltimore's division for the taking. We don't even know there. That's a first-year head coach. And Lamar Jackson has some seasons where, he can get banged up. He misses time. Like that division going into last year, and that division really for the last couple of years felt like kind of a stronger looking division where, Cincinnati with Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Baltimore, like that felt like, a team or a division rather that can send 3 teams into the postseason. And obviously Pittsburgh wasn't going to have their success, but, that felt like a division that was going to be one of the toughest in football. And now it's not the case. Like, there is a lot that we don't know about that division, and that's where it gets tough. We're still, ways away. The draft coming up this week. There's been some rumblings, about quarterbacks, and Carson Beck now is, rumored to maybe the Steelers take a flyer on him. I don't see why not. I mean, he's had a long college career. Sometimes these guys that don't get dubbed as early first-round picks end up having success. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is 41. They don't even know if they're going to be attached to him even for next season. So why not? Why not think about your future? And also, what's Rodgers going to do? They're going to win, 8 games, 9 games next year? And then get bounced in the first round in a big game? Get hammered like they did this past year against Houston? I don't know. I just kind of feel like, when you take a look at that division, Baltimore, you don't really know what you're going to expect out of a first-year head coach. Cleveland doesn't really know what they're doing. Cincinnati, they hope people are healthy. And then Pittsburgh. It's like Pittsburgh, I know it's not really in their organizational DNA, but I think they could use a good tanking. They could use like a nice overhaul to really just knock out a lot of the mediocrity within the organization. I mean, I think that's what they need. You just can't keep running it back with this same tired, defensive mentality, and we're just going to get just enough from our quarterbacks and win 9 games and get bounced in the playoffs. I just don't think that does anything for this organization. And like the idea of getting rid of Tomlin, at least what I thought, is it should have been a move to then get a young, innovative offensive mind in there who can be creative. And maybe you draft a quarterback, and that's his quarterback that he builds up to be one of the better ones, potentially, maybe. I just felt like that move, that play was better than this current route where it's just you're trying it again with Mike McCarthy, who's another retread. He had some success, getting to the playoffs in Dallas. But I don't really think that should be, like, you shouldn't be trying to live up to Dallas. Like, what Dallas has done over the last couple of years should not be what you're trying to build up towards. Like, sure, Prescott's a good quarterback, and they have good players, and they draft pretty well, but they don't win. They don't win, and it doesn't even really feel like they're building up towards winning. They don't feel like an upper echelon team in the NFC these past couple of years, like a Philly, like a Seattle. Say what you want about San Francisco. They've been in multiple Super Bowls recently, and they've lost close games against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So that was kind of I kind of went on a tangent, off of the Giants there, and I kind of wanted to discuss that at first. But I also wanted to shift gears here. So now there's a report that A.J. Brown is expected to be traded to the New England Patriots. That is the new news coming on that front. And let me pull it up right here. Yep, A.J. Brown likely to be traded to the Patriots after June 1st. So this is per Adam Schefter. It's kind of interesting. So, they've been kicking the tires a lot with this, with the A.J. Brown news. It feels like that this has been kind of waiting in the wings, and, the writing has been on the wall with A.J. Brown in an Eagles uniform. It felt like it was very turbulent. Even when he won the Super Bowl, it just never really felt like it clicked the way it should with a really good receiver and a team that's great. And whether it be Sirianni or Jalen Hurts, or maybe it's just A.J. Brown's personality, but something is not clicking there fully for A.J. And you could kind of just see it because it feels like you can win without him, especially if you think that Devontae Smith can blossom the way that a lot of people in that organization think he can. And I think Devontae Smith is, if you give him an opportunity to be a 1, I think he could definitely show that he's a 1. And I think he can have an unbelievably productive season. Now, does it really make sense to trade A.J. Brown? Well, maybe if you're not going to get high-end value. And it is kind of interesting. Normally, the report is A.J. Brown likely to be traded. So now it's A.J. Brown likely to be traded to the Patriots after June 1st. So that's just the move. Like, the deal is done, but obviously it's not officialized until after the draft. So we have to wait till June till he gets traded. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I think from New England's perspective, sure, why not? I mean, go get Drake May, another weapon. A.J. Brown's not old. He's productive. He maybe was a little less productive last season with Philly, but, could a lot of that just have to do with the fact that he didn't like playing in Philadelphia? I don't know. I mean, I do think that it's hard when you win a Super Bowl because then a lot of stuff tends to happen. And this tends to be the stuff that happens after you win a Super Bowl. It oftentimes is, turbulent, and sometimes guys don't agree with guys, and sometimes winning, sometimes that old adage of, it's a cliche, but winning's a great deodorant, where if you win, you can mask a lot of the cracks in the foundation and a lot of what makes a team poor. Maybe. I mean, maybe all of this just reached a boiling point, and eventually now it's not salvageable. I mean, Howie Roseman's a really smart guy. I'd argue he's the smartest front office personnel, and he's probably one of the most important chess pieces that's not a player. He's probably the most important non-player personnel in the NFL currently. I mean, you can argue McVay, Shanahan, one of the coaches. You could definitely argue that. I mean, that's definitely something you can have a conversation about. But Howie Roseman is definitely up there as he is the best GM in the sport. And you could argue one of the most important non-players for a team. So he's a smart guy, and the Eagles are a smart organization. And typically when they have 1 year where it's, maybe less than ideal, with Kevin Patullo, and the offense never really figured it out last year, that maybe there was a world in which A.J. Brown's time in an Eagles uniform was going to come to an end sooner than later. And I didn't really think it would ever reach a boiling point, but I think now that's where we've gotten. But the interesting thing about this story and the interesting thing about this headline, and again, rumored, it's reported by Schefter, but he has his sources, and there have been some other people that have had their sources regarding the Patriots. But, it's kind of interesting. It's just interesting that the report is likely to be traded to New England after June 1st. So that just leads us to believe that the deal's done and they're just waiting. Because let's be honest, if you just made A.J. Brown available on the market, you can get a lot of suitors. Yeah, we talk about the league kind of moving into a different sphere with, running backs having a heightened level of importance these last couple of seasons. But, at the end of the day, if you can get an all-world receiver and it's a disgruntled receiver with a team in Philadelphia who's looking to get rid of him, maybe you don't really have to give up as many assets as you might have had it just been a regular run-of-the-mill traditional trade. Maybe not. I mean, that's just speculatory, but that's kind of the way I would think about this whole situation now. And it is kind of interesting that it's just New England that's been reported. Is it just New England who's the only team that's willing to deal with the personality? I mean, I for a while everyone loved A.J. Brown, and now it's soured in Philly. So I don't know. Maybe it's coming to an end. I think it will. I think he's going to get traded, but it is just kind of interesting how everything's been reported. With over 750,000 views in the last 90 days, our social media is poppin'. Be a part of the trend. Follow 1077 The Bronx to see what we're up to on air and behind the scenes on Instagram at 1077 The Bronx and on TikTok at 1077 The Bronx WRRC. After you follow The Bronx on social media, sport The Bronx on and off campus. Gear up for summer by shopping the Bronx General Store. From short sleeve tees and polos to insulated drinkware for your Acai refresher. Go to 1077thebronx.com/shop the Bronx to make your campus fashion statement. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements. While you're waiting for the return of my show, don't forget to like and follow The Bronx on Instagram at 1077 The Bronx and on TikTok at 1077 The Bronx WRRC.
Programming on 1077 The Bronx and 1077 The Bronx Retro is underwritten in part by Jelly's Last Jam, now through April 26th at Bristol River.
student or seasoned senior preparing for the weary journey beyond Ryder's gates. But beware, good citizens of Ryder, the last meeting of springtime takes place on Thursday, April 30th. Don't miss your chance to make a mark upon the kingdom. Come, friends, we shall congregate with ideas to make Ryder the best place for new experiences at SGA's weekly Senate meetings.
Mornings are always better when you tune into 107.7 The Bronx, two-time IBS Media Award-winning Best Morning Show, Wake Up Ryder. Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Join Sophia, RJ Ellis, Brian Lathan, Brandon, and Sheer for 2 hours of fun and games, including the Monday Morning Hangover underwritten by McWinn's Place and the all-new Morning Bagel Run and Jewelry Spree underwritten by Caesar's Bagels and Deli and Peroni's Hidden Treasures in Mercerville. Go to 1077thebronx.com/wakeuprider to listen live on air, online, on app, and to catch up on past episodes. Welcome back to the Tom Hill Show on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station, 107.7 The Bronx. Tom Hill Show, about 8 or 9 minutes or so left in this show, and we've discussed both basketball and football, and I wanted to shift gears here in these last 8 minutes or so and, discuss some baseball and, something that has been kind of on my mind recently, and this is, just kind of trying to get this off of my chest because it needs to be said. While important that the Yankees have Paul Goldschmidt on the roster, I think the thing that we have to understand is that Ben Rice has transformed, and yes, it's a hot start. We don't want to try to get crazy, but I don't think people realize just how good Ben Rice is. I don't think people realize that this is a guy who can be a top 25 hitter in the sport, a top 20 hitter in the sport, maybe even a top 10 hitter in the sport. Like that, while it sounds hyperbolic, I don't think that is completely out of the realm of possibility. Cole Reagan's on the bump yesterday for Kansas City. Ben Rice takes him deep. Ben Rice currently this year is hitting .338, which is second in the league. Andy Pages, .382 right now for the Dodgers, is first. Rice has a .1276 OPS, that's first. 8 homers, third. 18 RBIs, ninth. He is absolutely ripping the cover off the ball. And if you take a look at a lot of the peripherals last year and a lot of the underlying stats and whatever the case may be, we kind of pegged this to be the breakout year, the true fully fledged pop year for Ben Rice offensively. And he has done that, I think, to a level that, even this start and even the biggest Ben Rice believer coming into this season didn't expect this type of start. I mean, this is a torrid start. He is ripping the absolute cover off the ball. We saw it in the Angels series last week. I do not understand Aaron Boone's belief that you have to sit him against left-handed pitching. I just don't understand that rationale. He homers yesterday against Reagans, who's a lefty for the Royals. And not even that, too, but also, just think about it from this perspective. If you think he could be the second best hitter on your team because Aaron Judge is all-world, you have to have him in the lineup against lefties. He can't just be a complete non-factor, 30% of the time, 20% of the time? While Paul Goldschmidt does serve a role on this team, the role that he serves on this team is to spell Ben Rice every now and then. And I just don't understand the logic. Well, we got to give Paul some at-bats. We can't have him have 7, 8, 9, 10 days off in a row. It's like, why? Why? Figure out a way to keep Ben Rice's bat in the lineup. And I understand, he mentioned, I like the idea of being able to fire him out there at any point. I like the idea of the minute they go to the pen and maybe the lefty starter gets rocked. Then in the 5th inning, you bring Ben in. Sure, maybe. I mean, I get that to a certain extent, but I just think if this guy can be a top 15, top 20 hitter in the sport, and I think that's not hyperbolic. I mean, he's obviously going to slow down from this pace, but you take a look at the underlying metrics last year, why can't he hit 40 homers in that stadium with that swing, lefty? I mean, come on. So I don't really understand this whole belief that we're not going to play him against a lot of lefty pitchers. I don't get that at all. To me, that's overmanaging. I can get it maybe if it's a struggling player like a Jazz Chisholm or a Ryan McMahon. I get that. I get that if you want to give them a day here and there, or, if a player is, 2 for their last 30 or 3 for their last 50 and really struggling mightily, and you want to give them a day and you figure, hey, it's a tough lefty, he's not going to be in the lineup today. I definitely can understand that 100% of the way. But what I don't understand is Ben Rice. That is a premier offensive player in this league. And if you take a look at a lot of the elite lefty bats in our sport, the Jordans, the Shohei Ohtanis, they're hitting lefties. They're mashing lefties. Similar to the way they mash righties. Now, it's never an issue with a righty hitter because you're not going to sit him against righties. I mean, that's silly that he faces those pitchers probably 70, 65% of the time. But that's what I don't understand. That's what I don't understand at all. It's just, and this is a Yankee team that's kind of been, back and forth. And I still think that it's a good team. And they just cleaned up over the weekend against Kansas City. So 13-9. I'm sure there's a world in which you like certain things like the pitching. Ryan Weathers with another great start yesterday. He's been a revelation. They finally give him run support. Max Fried had a blip his last start, but that's all it is. It's a blip. Schlittler's been unbelievable. So there is a lot to like, but that is kind of just the one pressing thing that I've had on my mind. And I think it's so fitting that Rice homers yesterday against the lefty. And I know Reagan's has dealt with some injuries this last year or so, and also dealt with an injury earlier this season. So he's not the same pitcher as he was 2 seasons ago. I get that. But this is a premier hitter. Don't overthink this. There are certain things in this sport where you can overthink. It's a long season. Maybe do you give a guy, I don't know. You give a guy a day here. Maybe you don't go to that bullpen arm there. Maybe you give a guy another day of rest if it's a starter. Maybe you skip his start if you're worried about innings. There's a lot to figure out, and there's a lot to worry about throughout the course of a season. But this should not be one of them. This should be something that's easy. This should be something that you do constantly. This should not be something that you worry about at all. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It's the bottom line. But from the Yankees' perspective, it could be worse. You could be the other team in New York. And the other team in New York is just, you want to talk reeling. I mean, that is just, it's been a disaster for the Mets. And, how fitting it is that Devin Williams blows the save. They've now lost 11 in a row. Again, it's still early. But the old adage, and it's a cliche, you can't win a pennant in April, but you sure can lose one. And you're behind the 8 ball now. Atlanta looks pretty good. We'll see with Philadelphia. The Dodgers aren't going anywhere. San Diego will be a presence in the NL. You got to figure the Cubs will too. Everyone in the Central now looks better than we thought. So you really do not know. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You don't know with this sport. You don't know who's going to be good. So when you are 7-15 and you've dropped 11 in a row, you got to get it going fast. Because if you don't get it going fast, it's going to be really, really tough. And I think that's where the Mets stand right now. A lot of new guys that aren't producing, like Bo Bichette and Marcus Semien. And that's sometimes what happens when you overhaul this roster. And Juan Soto being hurt has obviously contributed a lot to that. But, boy, they've been reeling. Thank you for listening to The Tom Hill Show. Stay tuned for more of the biggest hits and best variety on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station. 3-time 2026 IBS Media Award winner and 5-time NAB Marconi Radio Award nominee for College Radio Station of the Year. 107.7 The Bronx.
107.7 The Bronx, WRRC-FM, Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
From the throwbacks you love to the freshest tracks you can't stop playing, this is where the biggest hits meet the best variety. Hence, why we